All
As
right.
the song goes, don't get around much anymore. My legs don't work too well.
Oh, well, but you look beautiful. You look fantastic.
Well, I'm 98.
I can't believe it.
Yeah. In fact, I was at a big benefit at the Pantages for the high school musical awards.
Yes.
And they had all the high schools in Los Angeles and all the kids performing.
Yes.
And Mr. Pinocchio was the MC.
Yes.
And he came up and he said, and in the audience is so-and-so, so, and there's Patricia Morison, who was 99. I said to myself, wait a minute. I'm not 99 till next March.
They got to be careful. They got
Okay.
Well, actually, that was, you anticipated my first question, which is that there are, on the internet where I do some of my research for this, there are conflicting sources. Some say 1914, some say 1915.
1915.
1915. So we got to tell them that you're younger than they're giving you credit for.
Well, I don't mind as long. Where did he go?
He's up on the painting over here. Yeah.
He's very nosy and he gets into things.
So, well, I guess should I just dive into the questions?
Yeah, of course.
I was curious, as a kid, did you go to the theater or the movies? And if you did, were there any productions or people that were particular favorites of yours?
Well, no, I used to go, I lived in New York, and my mother was interested in the theater. She used to take me to the theater. But I used to see movies, and one of our dearest friends, my parents did, was Herbert Brennan. Do you know who Herbert Brennan was?
I don't.
He was he was the same era as DeMille.
Ah.
And he directed, he discovered Lon Chaney and Loretta Young.
Wow.
He did those early movies, and one of his most famous movies was Peter Pan, where the first time they used sort of did digital cameras. They made.
Was that with Mary Martin?
No, long before, honey.
Way earlier.
In the 20s. Mary Martin was my era. And they had trick photography where Tinkerbell was this size. And he was then a big movie director. And he used to come to our house because he was from Ireland and my mother was born in Ireland and they knew each other. But no, I went to movies very early in life.
And do you remember, was there an actress or a singer or someone who you really admired?
Well, I wasn't a singer then. I was a great Garbo fan.
Yes.
And Kay Francis.
Mm-hmm.
And Helen Hayes did a couple of wonderful films.
Yes.
The one with Gary Cooper. But I had my favorites. I used to go. I lived in Manhattan, and it was during the Depression.
Yes.
And the cheapest movies were down on 42nd Street. There were all these movie houses, and for 25 cents you could see a movie. And I had a girlfriend who would come in on subway from Brooklyn, and we'd meet at Times Square, and we'd go from one movie house to the other.
Amazing.
Yes.
And you mentioned the Depression, and that was something I wanted to ask you about because there aren't many people today who can remember it and can talk about. I mean, do you remember when A, the market crashed, and B, what the aftermath? I mean, is that clear in your memory?
Well, I can tell only from my experience.
Yes.
My father's business disappeared.
Yeah.
We had a lovely apartment on West End Avenue, which we managed to maintain, and we had to go on what they called relief in order to live.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I was around 16, 17, and because I could draw, I was going to be. I took an art course. I was going to be an artist, and you probably read about that. I won this.
No, I would love to hear. I'd love to hear.
In Washington Irving High School, I won a scholarship that would have taken me to Paris to study. And I said to my mother, I was 16, I said, I don't want to go to Paris. My mother said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to be an actress. And she said, oh, well, we better find the best drama school for you.
Amazing.
And
Wow.
she took me out of high school and took me to the neighborhood Playhouse. You've heard of the neighborhood Playhouse.
Of course.
And that's where I got started.
Now, isn't it amazing that your life could have taken such a different direction if you'd accepted that scholarship? Was it to the Beaux Arts, right?
Beaux-Arts, yeah, the Beaux-Arts in Paris.
Wow.
Yes.
So now, so you knew at that point that you wanted to be an actress. Why
yes.
Why do you think that was? What drew you to it?
Well, it may have been, as I say, Herbert Brennan, who used to come and visit, and it was the movies.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, for 25 cents you could go and you could see a movie. And
so
in those days, 25 cents, of course, was a lot more than it is, much more than it is today.
Yes.
He's singing to your toes.
Oh, I see that. Well, now, tell me about the neighborhood Playhouse when you started there, because it's now this sort of fabled place, and I wonder, who was teaching there, who was studying there?
Well, Martha Graham.
Yes.
I studied with Martha Graham, and they had Mary Torsai, who was from the Moscow Art Theater, the drama, and Louis Horst, and I've forgotten who else. And Ingrid Bergman had just had studied there for a while. And I met Edmund O'Brien there, and that's where I studied.
And was it very valuable? What sorts of things did you what as you look back? What are the main things you took away from that time?
I think the most important was Martha Graham, was movement. I mean, the acting things were what they still do today.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to see every play.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
But why was movement helpful for? I mean, because you weren't primarily a dancer, so but it was still useful in terms of singing and acting.
Of freedom, mm-hmm. Being free. You know, not having to walk out on stage even when you're nervous and do this.
Yes.
But it gives you freedom.
Interesting.
And I wasn't known as a singer.
Yes.
But I sang a little bit, and in 1938 I auditioned for this operetta called The Two Bouquets, yes. Which was a British spoof on an 1885 operetta. And my leading man was Alfred Drake.
Yes.
And I remember him saying to me when I tested for Paramount and MGM at the time, and I remember the casting director, his name was Louis Klein, and he would make me go to filming, when they were filming Stars,
yeah.
And Mae West I saw her make
her test?
Her screen test.
Wow.
And I saw Catherine
Hepburn.
Hepburn, and she was on Broadway in a version of the Greek play. It was called The Warrior's Husband.
Wow.
And I saw them making their tests.
So you literally watched them as they were being filmed, or you watched the footage
I watched them being filmed. In those days when they did a test,
yeah.
They decided what scenes, and they would rehearse shoot it, and they would film them like a film.
Wow, wow.
It wasn't just your head and your
right.
profile.
Now they would...
Cookie, no, just a shoot. No, Cookie, come here. Go away. Go away.
So now that was happening in New York when they would film the screen test in New York?
Yes, they would test you in New York.
Wow. Well, I want to jump backwards for a moment, because even before The Two Bouquets, you actually, I think 5 years before was when you first appeared on Broadway, right?
Yeah, in a play called Growing Pains.
Yes, tell me about that.
Well, I was one of the kids, about teenagers. Mm-hmm. I was so bad in it, they fired me. And I cried so hard they gave me a walk-on.
Wow, wow. And then it didn't last very long, right? But you kept working, and I think it's amazing when people hear who you understudied next, in between Growing Pains and The Two Bouquets. Talk about what you did between then.
Oh, Helen Hayes in Victoria Regina.
Yes.
Yes.
And as you mentioned, even growing up, she was somebody you sort of idolized.
Yes.
A lot of people today think of her as maybe the greatest.
Yes.
What did you observe? What did you learn from watching her every day?
Well, honey, watching a great stage actress playing a great role, I never got to play it because when she was out, they just closed the show.
Yes.
You know? But I was there, and I remember Vincent Price played Prince Albert.
Yes.
And he was so handsome, and I had such a mad crush on him, and he paid no attention to me whatsoever. And it wasn't until years later when I did a Gunsmoke with him And I hadn't met him, and I went over and I said, "You don't remember me?" He said, "Should I?" And I told him
the whole story. Yeah. Now, but from Helen Hayes as an actress, observing maybe the greatest actress, one of the greatest actresses for sure. Could you figure out what she did that made her so good? Was there any secret?
No, not. It was her.
Yeah.
I think, like I adored the Luntz.
Yes.
And I would, in those days, you could pay 25 cents to stand in the back of a theater. Mm-hmm. And I saw Noel Coward, all the Tonight at 8:30s with Noel Coward and Gertrude Lawrence, and I watched the Luntz.
Wow.
And I learned more from them than actually from drama school.
Now, and anything specific you would point to, or just taking it all in?
Just watching them.
Yeah. So, Two Bouquets, you're only 19 years old when that happened, right? Something approximately 19. It did not, I think it only lasted 55 performances, but it must have been you must have been terrific, because to have MGM and Paramount both interested in you. Do you remember, A, just the thrill of sort of starring in a Broadway show, and B, how did you find out there was this interest from Hollywood?
Well, in those days, you would go to all the offices and leave your name and hope they remember you.
Yeah.
And I got Two Bouquets because I wasn't known as a singer. Mm-hmm. And when I went to audition for it, my agent says, "Don't be nervous." And I remember going in the theater, the dark theater with these strange people sitting outside, and he's singing to you. I walked out, I went to the accompanist and I say, "Can you play Drink to Me Only with Thine Eyes Down Low?" Uh-huh. And he played it and I sang and I got the part.
Wow.
And Alfred Drake was my leading man. That's where we met.
And you must have been so thrilled at that. Do you remember finding out that you'd gotten the part?
Well, I didn't know him in those days.
No, but just to get the part.
Just for me to get the part.
Yeah.
And it got very good reviews, but it didn't last.
Yeah.
But and I remember I got my film contract, and Alfred said to me, "Don't go out there; they'll never know what to do with you."
Out in Hollywood.
Because he didn't like Hollywood. He was a stage actor.
Now, do you feel that there was any validity to what he said? I mean, there was some. Hollywood didn't totally capitalize on your talents because they didn't really give you much of an opportunity to sing.
I didn't. When I came to Paramount, I said, "I sing." They said, "We're not MGM."
So they just didn't.
So I said, "Okay," and my first film, which was called Persons in Hiding.
Yes.
I played something completely opposite to myself, but it was a kind of a sleeper hit.
Yes, like a.
And then they saw me afterwards as either the bad girl or the other woman. Right.
And then you're typecast, right?
I got typecast.
Yes. And just for the record, wasn't Persons in Hiding, your character in that, sort of based on Bonnie Parker from like Bonnie and Clyde, right?
It was based on somebody else whose husband was already in jail. Oh, what was her name? It wasn't Bonnie Parker. It was an earlier.
Okay, interesting.
Earlier one.
Now, what do you think attracted... First of all, how did you choose between Paramount and MGM?
They gave me a better deal.
They gave you And do you remember, I hope it's not impolite to ask, but do you remember what the deal was?
I can't remember.
You can't remember, yeah. But you were now a contract player at Paramount, right? So this requires moving to the other side of the country, right?
I moved. I came out on the Super Chief with my parents.
Yes.
And we rented a house in Beverly Hills. It was the war. My parents were both my mother Irish, my father English, and my mother's sister had 2 children, and their house had been bombed, and I brought them over from England to live with me.
Wow.
And I had my brother, had a big household.
Wow. And so what were your first impressions of Hollywood, the place? Did you like it? Did you feel at home?
I was still a New Yorker.
Yes.
I was very impressed with the beauty and, you know, the climate, but it's still not New York.
Right. And it's a very different kind of feel.
Yes. And in those days in Beverly Hills, it was very much a British colony. There was Brian Ahern, there was Charlie Chaplin, there was Basil Rathbone and his wife.
Yes.
And my parents being British.
They felt they liked it?
And my mother used to have tea every afternoon. And they would come over.
That whole crowd?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
So she maybe liked it even more than you did.
Well, yes, she was at home in a way.
Right. Now, what about your first impressions of Paramount? Here's the oldest studio lot in Hollywood, down on Melrose, right?
Yeah.
And you go through those famous gates, I assume.
Yeah.
And what was your first take on this whole? It's like a massive facility.
Oh, I was fascinated. I was fascinated, and I was fascinated with the physical studio. Every chance I'd get, I'd go and walk on the empty back lot, and walk down this Parisian street,
Yeah.
and this and that, and I just loved it, and I loved all the people, the artisans that made the things, you know, and no, I actually, I think I spent so much time enjoying myself. I didn't push myself too much as an actress.
So do you feel that?
And it was like a country club.
Yeah.
You know, we all had our dressing rooms, these little houses next to each other. And when we worked, I was working on a film, Hope and Crosby would be next, and every time we got a break, we'd rush over to their set, because when they got a break, they were funnier than when they were actually working. And then, and DeMille was working, and I remember they had a special table at the commissary, at the back, a big table. And we all knew that when he was working, we were going to get custard pie for dessert.
Very nice,
You know?
very nice.
Yes.
Now,
It was, you know, I think in many ways I enjoyed myself too much
you
to pay
think,
attention to what I should have been, which is getting the right part.
and yet, I mean, while you said that's interesting, you said that, but then at the same time, there were people under contract to the studio who were partiers, or they were, you know, wild. That wasn't you. It's just that you were distracted at work, would you say, or what? Because there were other people who didn't fulfill. Well, I'm not saying who you seem to feel that you could have done more.
Oh yes, I should have paid more attention. I should have paid. I wasn't interested in the politics in the studio.
Now, if you had been more aggressive, would that have involved fighting for certain parts or things like that?
Yes.
Are there?
I remember I was up for the lead in a film called The Glass Key with Alan Ladd.
Yes.
And I was in my dress, in Edith Head's, fitting my costume to start shooting the next day. And they sent word up to me that they'd taken me out of it and given it to Veronica Lake. And that absolutely destroyed me.
That must have been very upsetting.
Because and their excuse was I was too tall for Alan Ladd, which is not the excuse, believe me. But
what do you think their problem was? They just wanted a blonde, or they wanted something?
no, I think there was something else. I wouldn't go into it.
Okay. But
All that's gone, honey, a long time ago.
But suffice it to say, it was maybe to do more with Veronica Lake than you. It was, yes, I think I know where you're going. But now, what Paramount, when they signed you, I wonder, what do you think what drew you to them? I mean, one of the things that I have read is that they were looking for another Dorothy Lamour.
Well, because I had long hair.
Yes.
And yes.
Very long hair, right?
Yes.
39 inches?
Yeah, down to my hips.
That's amazing. But you also were sort of a little exotic looking.
That's what, yes.
That's what they said, right?
Yes.
Because I see that they...
I think she was giving them some trouble and was trying to get her a little nervous.
Well, it's funny because...
That only came to me later.
Yes. Well, it's interesting in their promotional materials. I don't know if this is. Do you remember this? But one of the promotional materials said Lamore plus Lamar equals Lamorison.
Yeah, that was one of the first things they sent to the movie magazine.
That's funny, huh? So, at Paramount, what was an average day like? What time do you get up? What do you do? And then just what's an average day for somebody who was under contract?
Making a movie, you mean?
Yes.
Well, you get there at dawn to be made up, and you go onto the set and you wait until 12 before they shoot it, which is usual.
Yeah.
And then we would have lunch at the commissary. Mm-hmm. And as I was saying, DeMille had his table when he was shooting at the back, and we used to say, he would come with his entourage. They used to say, "Here comes Jesus Christ and the disciples."
And then after lunch, there's more shooting?
Yes, more shooting, and sometimes would go late into the night.
But there was, what I gathered from other people who I've spoken with who worked around the same time, is that there wasn't, you didn't have the energy to go out and have much fun at night, right?
No.
Because you were expected back the next morning.
Yes.
Now, what happens if it was between projects, though? You're still under contract, you're still presumably getting paid, but you don't have something to do the next day, so what do you do?
Well, I had my family in my house. Thank God I had them.
But you didn't have to report to the studio every day?
No.
Yeah.
No.
So, your first movie there you mentioned was Persons in Hiding. I've read that your first movie there could have been Beau Guest, right? They wanted you for the part that ultimately went to Susan Hayward, is that right?
I think so, yes.
And that was just another weird casting thing.
Yeah.
Who knows what happened?
Who knows?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Now,
Persons in Hiding got very good reviews. I got very good reviews.
yes, and so did you expect that? Now that was sort of a B movie.
Yes.
Did you expect that would lead to a lot of A movie opportunities?
I didn't know.
Yeah.
I was really very naive.
Yeah.
I was enjoying because I was a movie fan. I was enjoying going to the studio.
Yeah.
I was enjoying going to other people's sets and seeing the stars that I had admired.
Yes.
And I enjoyed. I didn't enjoy the roles I got, but I enjoyed being in movies and being part of the movie scene.
Yes.
And when the war came, I worked at the Hollywood Canteen and had a wonderful time.
I wonder for young people who may not know what the Hollywood Canteen was, can you take a moment and explain what the Hollywood Canteen was?
Well, the Hollywood Canteen was a big, they turned this big warehouse into a cabaret. And it was for this GIs, where they could come and they could eat and dance with stars. And Marlene Dietrich was there all the time. If she wasn't in the kitchen cooking, she was out dancing with somebody. And it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. And then there was another group. There was an actors club here called the Maskers Club, where a lot of older actors belonged to. And they used to, every Sunday, have a dinner for a group of GIs. It was an old house turned into a club. And I was always the hostess.
Wow.
And it was a lot of fun. And I remember there was a famous singer called John Charles Thomas. You've heard of John Charles Thomas. And he made Home on the Range popular. Great voice.
Yes.
He was an operatic baritone. He would come and entertain, and he would sing seriously first, and then he'd get a twinkle in his eye, and he'd sing a song like a tenor with a cold. and then he'd tell all these awful jokes.
So you were involved with at both of these?
Both of them. I was being the hostess there.
That's very nice.
And then I was at the Hollywood Canteen. And then I was with the first USO group that went overseas.
Wow, yes.
With Merle O'Brien and Al Jolson.
And in fact, I want to come back to that because that overlapped with a little bit of the beginning of Kiss Me Kate, right? So let me, before we jump to that, I just have to ask you about what you had said. in another interview, quote, "I usually played the dark-haired, glamorous bitch roles," sort of like.
That's right.
Now, I think that two of the. Let me ask you about a few of them, if I may. The first one was the last of the Sherlock Holmes movies at Universal, where I guess you were loaned out.
I think I was not under contract.
Okay. So this is 1936.
Yeah.
Which, now how could that be though? Because you weren't.
No.
That can't be 1946.
46.
Sorry. And this, so Basil Rathbone, Nigel Bruce, and Dressed to Kill, the last of the Sherlock Holmes. Was that? Tell me about who you played and what it was like to join that group, which had made so many movies together.
Oh, that was wonderful.
Yeah.
Because I knew Basil Rathbone and his wife socially a lot. Oh, that was wonderful. That was one of my favorite roles.
And for the record, who were you? Do you remember who you played?
I forgot my name.
No, well, even if not the name, just essentially who your character.
I was this British society woman.
Yes.
Very elegant.
Yes.
But I was also in on a deal. It had to do with musical boxes.
Yes.
There was a musical box that had a code in it. The music had a code in it.
Yeah.
And the guys in jail who knew the code.
Yeah.
And the code led the way to the actual plates that made the Bank of England notes.
Yes.
I mean, it's a little roundabout way, but that's the way it happened.
And then the other one that really stands out to me as sort of one of the bitchier roles, if you will, would be the last of the Thin Man series at MGM, where Song of the Thin Man. Tell me about, they're actually talking about remaking a Thin Man movie, which seems a little bit sacrilegious, but this William Powell Myrna Loy, there was something special.
Oh yes,
wasn't it?
Yes. Oh yes.
What was it that, as you observed them up close and worked with them, what was it that made them popular enough to justify such a large number of movies together?
Well, honey, it's obvious. They're not the fact that they're good actors, but their charm.
Right.
I mean, it was natural. They didn't have to put it on.
Right.
It was there.
And also chemistry.
Yes.
You can't invent that, right?
Yeah. And in that movie, in the end, I shoot Lee Ames.
That's right, I do remember.
Leon Ames.
Yes.
And I was on a cruise a couple of years ago, and we were at the table, and this very handsome young man is sitting looking at me. He said to me, "You killed my father." And it happened to be Leon Ames' son.
Oh my goodness.
And Leon Ames used to call me Little Patty Morrison. Oh, yes, Little Patty Morrison.
It's amazing how life works.
Yeah.
Now, of all the movies that you made, I'm not sure that any one was better overall received than The Song of Bernadette, right? I mean, this is a movie that was nominated for, I think, Best Picture and a lot of great Oscars. And I wonder if you worked in that movie. You worked in that movie with Jennifer Jones, who ended up winning the Oscar. What do you remember about the making of that movie? What made her good, and what made the movie good?
Well, it's obvious. It's obvious. Just look at the movie.
Right. But is there something did you know as you were making it that it was something special?
Oh, yes. Yes, I mean, the whole 20th century lot was devoted to it, practically.
Really?
Yes.
And tell us about who the Empress was that you played.
Eugenie. Eugenie.
Yes. She, what was...
She was a Spanish princess.
Yes.
She was very vain. But she's a historical figure. She was famous for her gorgeous long hair, which she used to wear down. In the film you don't see that.
But it's interesting, what a coincidence. Yeah.
Yes.
So, another one that I think was particularly, you were particularly glamorous in, was the Fallen Sparrow with John Garfield. It was sort of a detective story, right?
Yes.
John Garfield died too young, right?
Terrible. Too young.
And that was really, a lot of people attribute to the blacklist. Is that something that
it was part of it.
Yeah.
It was part of it. I mean, it was a terrible time. It was a terrible time. I understand there was the great fear, there was the war, there was all this. But
did it affect people close to you, the blacklist? Was anybody blacklisted that you knew apart from John Garfield?
A few friends of mine.
Yeah. And did they ever...
I mean, because I was with the neighborhood Playhouse, in those days, it wasn't considered a crime to be a communist, you know, in the 30s.
Yeah.
There was another party.
Right.
And there used to be a man outside the neighborhood Playhouse with a little desk, and he'd give you your card.
Yeah.
And people took them with, you know, we didn't think of conspiracies.
Yeah. Did they ever try to recruit you?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
I said, I'm not a joiner.
Yes. So, another one that's sort of relevant because the leading lady of this movie just passed away was Lady on a Train with Deanna Durbin.
Oh, yes.
Now, you are the only person alive today who worked with Deanna Durbin as an adult. There were other children actors that... But I wonder, you know, because she left Hollywood, very few people alive today even remember her movie. You know, the people that love older movies know about her, but it's hard to understand what made her so popular, the #1 star in the world.
Honey, in those early new movies,
yeah.
I mean, she saved Universal Studios. They were going out of business.
Yes.
And here was this little girl, not especially glamorous,
Yeah.
who happened to have this pristine voice.
Yes.
And she said to me, God, I'm so glad, and we're doing them, I'm so glad I don't have to sing anymore.
Because now this was sort of one of her first adult roles, right?
Yes.
Interesting. And she didn't... Did you get the sense that she did not like being a movie star?
I think she was already tired of it.
Yeah.
And the director, he was a Frenchman.
Yeah.
She left her husband for him, but she went back to France.
And so was the director of Lady on a Train.
Yes.
That's right. Interesting. So, and did you see sparks on the set between them?
Well, there was certain things.
Yeah.
Yes. There was certain
A little
things
a little flirtation.
It wasn't even that.
Yeah.
There were undercover things going. You know, she had the set dressing room and who was going in and out, and every once in a while scenes would be held up. I think it was a struggle she was going with her husband and with him. But I can't say that for sure.
No, but that's interesting. It all happened right there.
But I'd spoken to her a couple of times in France, and she said she couldn't be happier. She said she couldn't be happier.
Wow. Now this was in recent years?
In recent years.
Wow. And she was just didn't want any part of being...
No, she had children and grandchildren.
Yes.
And she had a completely different life.
Wow.
Yeah.
Could you understand what might make somebody want that, to get away from it all?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're super ambitious,
yeah,
that's a different thing.
Right.
You want it,
right.
Grab it. But she was not like that.
Yeah.
She was put up as a kid.
Yeah.
Her parents, you can do this. And then, oh, look what you've just done.
Yeah.
You saved our studio, this and that. And it ddidn't mean that much to her.
Yeah. And it's too late once you've made it to you can't take it back. You can't get back your anonymity.
No.
The last movie, well, there's two more movies that I'd like to just quickly ask you about if I can. This is fun. The first one, you were a pretty bossy woman in this one. This was Without Love with Tracy and Hepburn.
Oh yes, I was awful in that
You were
movie.
a tough cookie.
I didn't like that movie. I didn't like that part at all.
Because of the way you came across?
Yeah.
And yet, of course, interestingly,
I
that...
had fun, mate. And you know what I enjoyed about movies? I enjoyed the making them rather than worrying about what they were like.
Right.
You know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, in that case, of course, one of the things that will... Even if the movie was not the greatest of movies, it will be forever watched because it's one of these
Tracy
series.
and Hepburn.
Yes. Now, what did you make of the two of them? Not similar, particularly in age, not similar in temperament, really. Why did they click?
I think they belong together. I couldn't tell you why, but when I saw them together, and as I told you, I saw her make her first screen test in New York, and I followed her career a long time, and I've met Spencer Tracy, but when they were together, they were together, and there were times when he'd be shooting a scene without her, she'd be right there next to the camera.
Supporting him.
Yes.
Why do you...
Because they were complete opposites in a way.
Yes.
Whether they were, I don't know. But to the average person, what did she see in him?
Right.
And what did he see in her?
Right. It's so interesting. And I guess he never left his wife.
No.
But do you have any doubt that they were romantic? Because...
Oh, I'm sure they were.
They must have been, right?
I'm sure they were. He was Catholic, and his wife, and they had this boy, and they had this foundation for the deaf, and I guess they worked it out.
Yeah, and yet he and Hepburn carried it on till the end.
Yes, they did.
So the final one of the movies that I have to ask you about is a role that I guess is sort of when you talk about a Dorothy Lamour type part that they were maybe looking for to be the Huntress in Tarzan and the Huntress, the last again of the Johnny Weissmuller.
It was.
Now, was that a experience unlike others?
Absolutely. we shot it out in Arcadia at Billy. Well, there's a big ranch there where they have the jungle, and I had more fun. One of the interesting things about making movies, it's a strange thing. I get very serious about theater and concentrate. But making movies had a touch of fun about it.
Yes.
And here we would be in this place, and Weissmuller's going around showing off his body and everything. And we had the chimpanzee, and we're all outside shooting this scene. And all of a sudden the chimp went berserk.
Really?
And they get very dangerous.
Yeah.
And he starts chasing everywhere. We ran like crazy to our cars, rolled up the windows, and he's banging on the
Oh my goodness.
And the trainer said they reach a certain age sometimes and they go wild.
Yeah.
And this happened in the middle of a scene. We're sitting around the fire, with Cheetah, and Cheetah's being, all of a sudden Cheetah goes,
That's
and every cameraman, everybody
gets the hell out, right?
Scattered in all directions. Yes.
Now, Weissmuller is for somebody who is as big a star as he was when he was active. It's another name that I think a lot of younger people today don't know, and yet the movies that are most popular today are sort of the descendants of the Tarzan kinds of movies, the action, adventure. He was kind of a unique character in Hollywood, right?
He was, and he was a beautiful guy.
Yeah.
Very sweet. He died, I think he died in Mexico.
Now, the oddest story that I've heard about your career, and I know that it must have seemed very odd to you as well, was what happened with Kiss of Death, where you're credited for the movie, you acted in the movie, and yet somebody who puts on the movie today will not see you. What happened?
Have you heard that story?
I've heard bits and pieces, but I want the authority to tell me.
Well, it's one of the most different roles I ever played. I played an Italian-American woman with a baby in downtown we shot it in the Italian district in New York. Victor Mature's wife. And he sent up the river, and he puts one of his henchmen in charge of me and the baby. And what happens is the guy rapes me, and I'm so shamed that I put my head in the oven and commit suicide. We had censors then. Now I still have it somewhere, a wire from Darryl Zanuck. Pat, this is a breakout performance. You were so wonderful. I wouldn't be surprised if you got a supporting Academy. I have the choir somewhere.
If you got a supporting actress Oscar nomination?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And the whole thing was cut out of the music because the censors said you could not show a rape and you could not show a suicide.
Unbelievable. Now this is the Hayes office?
Yeah.
Could you, that must have been devastating for
Yeah.
you.
Oh, of course it was.
Terrible. Now the thing that the studios seem to have screwed up on the most, in hindsight, is they didn't appreciate what a great voice they were dealing with. Because if they did, I mean, you should have been at MGM making these great musicals, right?
I don't know.
I mean, you were as good as anybody. So, and they didn't understand it so much so that they even, in the case of Silver Skates, dubbed you.
Oh,
I mean,
yes.
it's unbelievable.
And that's funny, you know. Silver Skates was a B movie,
Yeah.
and I learned the song, and I came on the set ready to sing it, and I hear this playback, and I said, wait a minute, I'm a singer. Oh, we didn't know that. I said, well, oh no, we can't afford the orchestra a second time.
Ugh, that's unbelievable. Well, I'm sure they eventually came to regret that too, but now, eventually, I guess, when you went back to Broadway, for Allah Be Praised and then for Kiss Me Kate, was that precipitated by was it more, I'm done with Hollywood, I don't want anything more to do with Hollywood, or it's, I'm excited to go back to Broadway?
No, not that I'm done with Hollywood. I studied voice very carefully and developed my voice, and I wanted people to hear me.
Yes.
And when I went to audition for Cole Porter at his house out in Rockingham, my agent said to me, "It's not for anything. It's just so that he can hear you sing."
And this came about just, you get a phone call out of the blue one day?
No, my agent called me. I'm taking you out to Cole Porter's house.
But what I mean is, how did Cole Porter even reach out? What led him to say?
I don't know.
But your agent just got a call one day.
And so we went out, and he was charming, and I sang for him, and he gave me the score of Kiss Me Kate. He said, "Learn this and bring it back to me." And that time he couldn't raise money for Kiss Me Kate. All his friends said, "Oh no, Cole, you don't have it anymore." You know, he's had a couple of flops, I think, and he had a hard time. He used to give these wonderful dinner parties for all his rich friends, and have people audition the songs, and they say, "No, what a musical about Shakespeare? Who wants that?"
But what was your instant reaction when you saw the music? Did you feel that it had potential?
I loved it. Are you
did.
Kidding?
Right away.
Yes. And then it was forgotten. And then I started to do this series.
Yes.
Called The Cases of Eddie Drake.
On TV.
On TV, which was early television series. Where were we?
So you were saying that you went out with your agent. Now this, to Cole Porter. Now you went out. What did you believe you were going there for?
Well, my manager wanted me to get used to auditioning for people.
Yes.
Because I wasn't known as a singer. He said, "I'm taking you out to Cole Porter. It's not for anything. It's just to get you used to it."
Yeah.
And we drove out to his house in Rockingham, and I sang for him. And he played the piano. He's very charming. And he gave me the score of Kiss Me Kate and gave me the music. Said, "Learn this and come back and sing." And and in those days he couldn't get anybody to back Kiss Me Kate. And he would have these lovely dinner parties for all his rich friends and had people sing. And they said, "A musical about Shakespeare? No." And when it finally came around to where it's going to be done, they said, "Oh no, we don't want Patricia Morison. We have an opera singer."
This is
Jarmila Novotny.
Yes.
For the part. And I had been with the very first USO group from Hollywood that went overseas with Merle Oberon and Al Jolson in the war. And Bob Hope was having one of his big reunions at Madison Square Garden. And it was going to be on a Saturday. I was going to start shooting the cases of Eddie Drake on Monday. And my agent called me and says, get on that plane. And I can't. He says, you're getting on that plane. And I flew east with Bob Hope, did the thing at Madison Square Garden, went to the Century Theater, and sang for these people who weren't interested in me. The producers.
Including, just for the record, was this Bella Spiewak?
Bella Spiewak, who wrote the script.
Yes.
And when I finish, she's coming over to me, darling, would you like a cup of tea? and I get home, and the next day, Wynn called me and says, you've got the part. I said, well, what am I going to do with the series?
Yeah.
So it was so new in those days.
Yes.
The producer said, well, if you promise, all my scenes were in my office. This next 10 days, we'll shoot all your scenes. So you don't have to worry, as long as you promise to publicize our show when you're on Broadway.
Because they knew you were going on to bigger and better things. Now, that's amazing. Now, before we, this is wonderful. Are you kidding? This is wonderful. And I anticipated that you would bring up the case of Eddie Drake, because one of the cases of Eddie Drake, I should say. One of my questions was about television at that. We're talking 1947, I think. Mm-hmm. This is very early.
Yes.
What was it like? Obviously, it was live, right?
Yes.
What was your experience? Did you enjoy it? It seems like it might have felt like film theater, right?
No, I don't think it was live. I think it was filmed.
Or it was filmed, because you're doing this in Los Angeles, not New York, right?
That's right.
Which would eventually change. Most of TV would be in New York, right?
Yes.
So let's say it's okay. So however it was recorded.
I don't really remember.
No, that's fine. But there must have Did it feel like it was just theater being filmed?
Yes, sort of.
Yeah. Were there any unique?
I only did one scene, actually.
Well, one series.
One part, yes.
Yes.
Because every scene was in the same set.
So they would always come to you.
Which was a psychiatrist's office.
Yes, yes.
And I think they were my medical
yes.
office. He's telling me, he's flying down to tell me the story.
Right. Okay, so you get out of the cases of Eddie Drake. Mm-hmm. You go to do Kiss Me Kate, and it seems like everybody must have been pretty shocked, because prior to that they didn't know you could sing, right?
That's right.
So what were the early reactions to the show? Was it a smash right away?
Well, when we opened first in Philadelphia, and most of us didn't know what we had. Mm-hmm. We kept saying, well, if it flops, it flops, you know. If we get good personal reviews, you were lucky. We opened in Philadelphia, and I remember the cast, when rehearsal, used to say to me, I had a song in it, it was Catherine's diatribe against mankind, called I Hate Men.
Yes.
And they used to come to me and say, you have to get Cole to take that number out of the show, because it makes you look terrible. And I would go to Cole, and Cole said, Pat, I want you to do me a favor. There was a Victor Herbert operetta where a man sang, I want what I want when I want it, bang. He says, you just bang that tankard. And of course, opening night, it stopped the show.
Interesting.
In Philadelphia.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And then when you got to New York, big hit?
It was a hit before we got there.
Amazing.
And I'll tell you something about that was interesting.
Yes.
Cole Porter's mother, who was a little lady, was in the audience with him. And he said, my mother loved you. I said, well, why didn't she come backstage?
Yes.
And he said, oh, the next night, this little replica of Cole in a white mink, I'm Cole's mother. I came up. Cole told me I had to come back.
Wow.
He was a dear, he became a very dear friend of mine.
And I imagine over the course of 1,077 performances, you got to know him and everybody else quite well, including just one of these life coming full circle things, to be back with Alfred Drake.
Yes.
Isn't that amazing?
Alfred, I wish I had my scrapbook down showing the pictures of us in two bouquets.
Oh, wow.
In which he played a completely different, he played Albert Porter, who was too shy.
Yes.
to say he loved me.
Yes.
And opposed to Petruchio.
Yes, who's not shy.
No.
So that was a amazing how much can happen in a decade. That was 10 years after
Yes.
Two Bouquets when
Yes.
you. So, did you have a favorite song to perform in the show?
In Kate?
Yes.
I'm so in love.
Yes. Now you still sing, don't you?
Yes.
Would it be pushing my luck too much to ask for a taste of that? I wish I could have seen it when it happened.
Oh dear.
Just a taste.
I don't know. Strange dear, but true dear, when I'm close to you, dear.
That's
enough.
Beautiful. It's beautiful. Thank you.
The stars fill the sky, so in love with you am I. That's enough.
That's wonderful. Thank you. I hope it's not rude to ask. It was just so special.
No, I do what we call the stage benefit, which is the Actors Fund.
Yes.
Heard of it, the Actors
Yes.
Fund?
Yes. I heard you got 2 showstoppers.
Yes.
You were the hit.
Yes.
Rightfully so.
I don't know.
Wow. Well, no, thank you. When else will I ever get a chance to ask you or to hear that? So that's very special. And I guess the one thing that's baffled me when you look at the great musicals that have been turned from theater to movies,
Yeah.
far too often it seems they're not smart enough to retain the people that made the show great as a theatrical performance.
Uh-huh.
And this is a prime example of that. Not that the movie was bad, but what's wrong with them?
Well, honey, they had the rights to it, and they used the vehicle for Catherine Grayson and Howard Heath, who are their contract players.
Right.
And there's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Originally, I did it in London. It was a big hit in London, and there was Corder was talking to Cole Porter about doing it in London and photographing it from the stage as a stage play.
Wow.
But MGM made him an offer he couldn't
Yes.
refuse.
Wow. Well, that's their loss, right? I mean, our loss, but it's interesting that it just seems to happen so often. They don't keep the people that made it great.
No.
Too bad. But I guess another let's just say that for the isn't it correct? Most people don't have one great role in their careers. For you, it was essentially back to back, right? Where right after Kate, you replaced a childhood idol of yours, Gertrude Lawrence, in The King and I, right? Could you believe that it was this turn of events?
No.
I mean, now it wasn't directly after she died, right?
No, because I was in London with Kiss Me Kate.
Yes.
And I couldn't leave the show, and a few lovely ladies played
They wanted you.
Played her, and yes.
Amazing. Now, is it hard to walk in? I don't know if you've done this on any other occasion, but is it hard to walk into a production where everything else is sort of already in place? Everybody knows each other. Everybody, it's like a guest star on a TV show. I would imagine it's got to be.
Probably. No, I didn't think of it that way.
Yeah.
No, everyone was very nice. And,
Yeah.
And
I guess the one that it would be most important was very nice would be Yul Brynner, right?
well, yes.
Was he?
Well, I've told this story before. When I was rehearsing,
Yeah.
he was away on vacation, and the weekend before we were to go into it, he came on the stage and watching me rehearse, and somebody had asked him what he thought of me, and he said to them, "I don't know. I haven't been to bed with her yet."
Oh my goodness! What did you?
and I said to myself, "Oh no."
That's not.
And I've told this story so often, I don't know. And he came to watching me rehearse.
Yeah.
And he said, well, Miss Morison, we're going to start on Monday. Would you stop by my dressing room? First of all, he said, would you have dinner with me? I said, no, Mr. Burnett. And then he said, would you stop by my dressing room on the way out?
Yes.
And I knocked on the door. He said, come in. And he was sitting in front of the mirror, Buddha fashion, completely nude. And I looked at him and I said, his eyes.
Yeah.
And I said, you wish to see me, Mr. Burnett? He said, well, you know, I have to stain my body for this role. I said, I understand. He said, I want to welcome you to the show. Well, we started working together and we ended up, he was one of the best actors and one of the nicest people I have ever worked with.
Really?
I mean, we were a long time doing 8 shows a week all across the country under all kinds of conditions.
Mm.
And he was a naughty boy, yes.
He kept...
I mean, we had all the small house of Uncle Thomas, all the wives and all the mothers with the children who were always in front of his dressing room door.
Yeah.
But no, I respected him and when every night, even with all those constant 8 shows a week,
Mm-hmm.
every night we could be exhausted, and every night you step on stage, it hit.
Mm-hmm.
And that was so exciting to me. I liked him a lot. And I knew all the stories. but I liked him a lot.
Yes.
And, you know, he liked to say he was a Tartar from the outer reaches of Siberia. He came from a very cultivated family in Vladivostok. and Russian told me that his Russian was the purest.
Who told you this?
His friends, his
Oh,
Russian friends.
Yes.
That when he spoke Russian, it was the elegant.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, you did a lot of performances of both Kate and King and I. He did with King and I think a record number, right?
Oh yes, even when he was ill.
Even when he was ill. And my question is, why is it that actors so often, and I don't know if this is the case for you, but when you ask them, what was your favorite medium? Was it television? Was it radio? Was it film? Or was it theater? Almost invariably they say theater.
Yes.
Even though it seems to me as a non-actor, it might grow tiresome to do the same thing over and over and over again.
It can be if you don't have a good play.
Yes. But you would agree that theater is the best?
Yes. Well, you know, you walk when the curtain goes up and you feel the rush of warmth from the audience. That's what does it. And you don't even, sometimes you may see a few people in the front row, but the fact that there's that live feeling that can inspire you. You know, I wore my long hair, I wore it down in Kate, and there was a scene in which Petruchio says, "How no," Kate would hit me on the shoulder and my hair would fall over my face, and I'd pull it back and he'd do it again, and it was a laugh thing. And on matinee days, you could hear the ladies saying, "Of course it's a wig." Yeah, of course it's a wig. And Alfred would grab my hair and yank it.
Just to show that it wasn't.
Yeah, I could have killed him.
Wow, but you can literally even hear the audience when you're...
Yes, especially matinee days, because they were mostly women.
Yes.
And the yakking.
Yes, the chatting. So, I guess you obviously continued in touring and stock productions long after those two, and
I did Pal Joey. What's another role I love doing?
Pal Joey, yes, and even not only theater but television. I know you on Cheers. You were very memorable on Cheers. But many things. And I guess though, at the end of the day, you will probably be most closely associated for history with the theater, right? So,
yes, but it's interesting. The films
they live on.
The few that I'm known for still go on.
Yes.
And I do get fan mail, but mostly from film.
I guess that's the one downside of theater is that it's not preserved. in the same way,
That's
right?
right.
Because film, we can go and put on even persons in hiding or anything. But if we wanted to see you as Kate, I don't know that we could ever do that. Is there any recording or anything?
Well, there was a television version.
But not of the actual Broadway
Not
production?
the actual Broadway. It was Alfred Drake and I.
Right, so that is, in some ways, you had to be there.
It was a beautiful production, but it didn't have the flavor.
That's what I mean, that if for somebody to see what made Kate such a hit when it first, it's just, I guess that in one way is the downside of theater versus film, right? That we will never see that moment recaptured. But it also makes it probably that much more special for the people who were there. They saw something that nobody else will ever see.
Right. That's true.
And I know you've spoken as my final question here, you've spoken in the past, I think, pretty passionately, probably for that reason, about the fact that it's gotten so expensive for people to go to the theater that you're actually losing future generations of people who,
honey.
right?
And I mean, I think the big rock concerts are wonderful. I mean, that's a different culture, and it's wonderful, but not at the expense of having young people see live theater.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when I was growing up and I used to walk, I had my fare coming home and to buy a hot dog, and there would be 25 cents I could stand in the back of a theater, and I saw all Noel Coward and Gertrude Lawrence's Tonight at 8:30 with the original cast. I saw the lumps, and it's a pity.
Today it would cost somebody $300 to do that, right? I mean,
honey, Broadway's gotten out of line, but at least it's thriving.
Yeah, but at what?
It was dying,
It's true, but at what price? Because if there's no young person that can spend that kind of money, so who are the future Broadway theater goers?
No, there aren't. Mm-hmm. And I mean, all the big rock stars, they'll draw the young people today, which is wonderful. That's it, but not at the expense of. I think there's nothing like the experience of seeing a great play for the first time. With wonderful performance. I remember The Glass Menagerie when I saw it. I walked out of the theater, I couldn't talk for an hour. And when I get together with my actor friends, they all tell me the same thing. That they couldn't afford sometimes the tickets, so they do what they call second acting. You know what that is? Mm-hmm. That's where they stand out with the crowd at intermission, and they walk in at the second act.
That's great. Well, I'm only sorry that I didn't get to see you perform this live. I wish I'd been around, because everybody that I read or talk to who did says it was like nothing else they'd ever seen. So I
am so fortunate. When I start feeling sorry for myself and say, here I am, 98, and I sit a lot, I say to myself, shut up.
It's better than the alternative, right?
And no, but look what I have, and my friends are all part of the theater today. Mm-hmm. And they're lively and they're wonderful.
Because you have a rich history to look back upon.
Well, I'm a very fortunate woman.
Well, thank you.
When I get sorry for myself, I just say, stop it.
Well, thank you so much for this. This was wonderful. I really appreciate it.
I've enjoyed every minute.
Me too.